species, Amanda felt confident that they had chosen the right path. The truth was powerful, and once it was, the great assembly hall of Nexus Prime had never seen anything like this before. Representatives from hundreds of council member species filled the circular chamber, their voices creating a constant buzz of confusion and anger. At the center podium, Amanda stood beside delegates from the 6 coalition species, facing questions that had been building for 3 centuries. Chairman Thex sat at the elevated council leadership platform, his blue-scaled face showing the strain of the past week. Since the coalition's arrival, council member species had been demanding answers about the quarantine system. Some wanted to know why beneficial technologies had been suppressed. Others questioned whether their own worlds might be next for isolation, if they developed innovations too quickly. "Dr. Carter," Chairman Thex said, his voice echoing through the hall, "you have presented extensive evidence of what you call deception, but the Council maintains that quarantine protocols exist for galactic safety. How do you respond to the possibility that releasing these species could destabilize interstellar peace?" Amanda looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces watching her. Some looked curious, others angry, many confused. She had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing for this moment. "Chairman Thex, with respect, the evidence shows that quarantine species have consistently offered to share technologies that would improve galactic safety, not threaten it," she replied. "The Vraxians developed non-lethal weapons specifically to reduce casualties in space conflicts. The Zalani created medical advances that could eliminate diseases affecting dozens of council member worlds. The Quinn built more efficient engines that would reduce resource consumption across the galaxy." General Thane stepped forward. "We did not develop these technologies to threaten anyone. We developed them to solve problems that affect all spacefaring species. The Council rejected our offers without even testing them." A delegate from the Althari species, one of the Council's founding members, stood up. "General Thane, your people are warriors. How can we trust that your weapons technology would not eventually be turned against peaceful species?" "Because," General Thane replied calmly, "our warrior culture values honor above victory. A warrior who wins by causing unnecessary death or suffering brings shame to their family for generations. That is why we created weapons that disable rather than destroy." Dr. Craze from the Keth Collective activated a holographic display showing his people's self-repairing ships. "Council members, for 200 years the Keth have offered to share our engineering techniques. Our ships can repair battle damage in minutes. This technology could save countless lives by making rescue operations faster and safer. Yet the Council classified our homeworld as an industrial wasteland to avoid admitting they were interested in our innovations." Murmurs spread through the assembly hall. Several Council delegates were conferring urgently with their assistants, pulling up records and trying to verify the Coalition's claims. Dr. Foster spoke next. "Honored delegates, we are not here to assign blame or seek revenge. We are here to propose a better future for the galaxy. Imagine what could be accomplished if all species were free to share knowledge and work together instead of being isolated based on political fears." A delegate from the Centauri Federation raised her hand. "Dr. Foster, if the quarantine system is eliminated, how do we ensure that genuinely dangerous technologies are not spread throughout the galaxy?" Jake answered this question. "The same way we handle dangerous technologies now, through open discussion, safety testing, and voluntary agreements between species. The difference is that these decisions would be made based on actual evidence instead of political considerations." Chairman Thex looked uncomfortable as more Council delegates began asking pointed questions about specific quarantine decisions. The Helix Consortium wanted to know why they had been discouraged from pursuing trade relationships with quarantined species. The Spiral Alliance questioned whether their own rapid technological development might make them targets for future quarantine. Dr. Ryan Martinez projected technical specifications onto the hall's main display screen. "Chairman Thex, I have spent 2 weeks analyzing council technology with the permission of your engineering departments. The data shows that most council systems are between 50 and 200 years behind the innovations developed by quarantined species. The display showed side-by-side comparisons of council ships versus coalition vessels. Energy efficiency, speed, defensive capabilities, medical systems. In every category, the quarantined species had achieved superior results. This is not because council engineers are incompetent, Dr. Martinez continued. It is because the council has been cutting itself off from the galaxy's most innovative minds for 3 centuries. You have been weakening yourselves to maintain political control. An elderly delegate from the Titan Confederacy stood slowly. Her species had been council members for over 400 years, making them one of the most respected voices in the assembly. I remember the early days of the quarantine system, she said in a voice that carried across the silent hall. We were told it was temporary, until dangerous species could be educated about galactic peace. But temporary became permanent, and education became isolation. She looked directly at Chairman Thex. I also remember that council military strength peaked 200 years ago and has been gradually declining since then. Now I understand why. We have been cutting ourselves off from the very innovations that could have kept us strong. Delegates began speaking, and their voices grew louder as the implications became clear. The Council had not been protecting the galaxy from dangerous species. It had been protecting its own power structure from competition. Dr. Zara Voss stepped forward with a proposal that she and Amanda had developed over the past week. Honored delegates, we propose the creation of a new galactic government based on voluntary cooperation instead of artificial hierarchy. The Allied Worlds Consortium would welcome all species as equals, with representation based on population and contribution rather than political manipulation. Chairman Thex tried to regain control of the situation. You are proposing to destroy a system of government that has maintained peace for over 1,000 years. The risks of such dramatic change are enormous. General Thane laughed, but it was not a mocking sound. Chairman Thex, you speak of maintaining peace, but the quarantine system has prevented the galaxy from achieving its full potential. How many problems could have been solved if species had been free to work together? How many lives could have been saved with better medical technology? How many conflicts could have been avoided with more effective diplomatic tools? Amanda saw that the mood in the assembly hall was shifting. Delegates who had been skeptical at the beginning were now asking detailed questions about how the new consortium would operate. They wanted to know about trade agreements, technology-sharing protocols, and defense arrangements. The transition would be gradual, Dr. Foster explained. Existing council agreements would remain in effect until they could be renegotiated fairly. No species would be forced to join the consortium, but all would be welcome as equals. A delegate from the Orion Union asked, "What guarantees do we have that the formerly quarantined species would not use their superior technology to dominate the new government?" Dr. Krez answered this concern. Because we have spent centuries developing in isolation, we understand the value of independence. The last thing we want is to replace one domineering system with another. We propose that no single species or small group of species can control more than 15% of consortium leadership positions. Jake added, the consortium would be based on the principle that diversity makes everyone stronger. We have seen what happens when innovation is suppressed. We do not want to repeat that mistake. Over the next 3 days, the Assembly Hall became the site of the most important negotiations in galactic history. Coalition species presented detailed proposals for technology sharing, medical cooperation, and defense coordination. Council member species raised concerns about transition procedures, economic impacts, and security arrangements. Not every council member was convinced. Some species, particularly those whose power depended on the existing system, argued for maintaining the status quo. But they were increasingly outnumbered by delegates who saw the potential benefits of opening the galaxy to innovation and cooperation. On the 4th day, Chairman Thex called for a formal vote. The resolution was simple: dissolve the existing council quarantine system, and begin negotiations for a new galactic government based on voluntary participation and equal representation. The vote was closer than Amanda had hoped, but clear enough to be decisive. 2/3 of council member species voted to end the quarantine system. Less than a quarter voted to maintain it. The remainder abstained, choosing to wait and see how events developed. As the vote results were announced, Amanda felt a mixture of relief and excitement. They had done it. The coalition had succeeded in exposing the truth and convincing the galaxy to choose a better path forward, but she also knew that the real work was just beginning. Creating a new galactic government would take years of careful negotiation and compromise. The blue towers of the city were broken. Commander Veltar stood at the window of the command center and looked out at what was left of his world. The tall crystal buildings that once reached toward the sky now lay in pieces. Their bright light was almost gone. Only a few weak sparks still blinked in the ruins. Veltar pressed his hand against the cold glass. His 6 fingers left marks on the surface. Behind him, the war room buzzed with activity. Officers from different worlds worked at their stations. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of hands. A few looked like walking plants, but they all shared the same look of fear. "Sir, the shadow creatures have broken through the outer wall," said Lieutenant HFY. Her voice shook as she spoke. She was from the water world of depths. Her blue skin had turned pale with worry. "They will reach the underground shelters in 2 hours. Veltar closed his eyes. The Voidborn had been attacking for 3 months. They came from the empty space between stars. They ate light itself. Where they went, everything became dark and cold. 17 worlds had already fallen to them. His world would be number 18. "How many ships do we have left?" Veltar asked. He already knew the answer would be bad. "None, sir. The last transport ship was destroyed this morning. We have 40,000 people hiding in the caves below the city. There is no way to get them out." The commander turned away from the window. On the big screen in the center of the room, red dots showed where the enemy was moving. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They moved like living shadows across the map. Every race in the Galaxy Defense Coalition had sent help. The bug people brought their smart computers. The water people gave them energy shields. The gas beings shared their ability to move through walls. None of it had worked. Veltar walked to his command chair. It was made from the living wood of his home planet. The wood still grew even here, far from its roots. Small leaves sprouted from the armrests. He sat down and felt the chair adjust to his body. "Sir," said Dr. Morin, the head scientist. He was tall and thin with gray skin that looked like stone. "I have been studying the enemy ships. They do not follow the laws of physics as we know them." "Explain," Veltar said. "They exist in more than one place at the same time. When we shoot at them, they move to a different space, a space we cannot reach. Our weapons pass right through them." HFY looked up from her station. "Sir, perhaps we should think about the final protocol." Final protocol. Veltar had hoped he would never hear those words. It meant destroying their own planet to stop the enemy from taking it. Everyone still on the surface would die, but it would deny the Voidborn their prize. "How long do we have?" he asked. "At their current speed, they will reach the main shelter." "In 90 minutes, reported Captain Zexalon. He was from the desert world of sands. His 4 eyes could see things others could not. "They are moving faster now. I think they can smell the people hiding below." Veltar stood up. He walked to the communication station. His hands moved over the controls. Soon his voice would reach every shelter on the planet. He would have to tell 40,000 people that they were going to die. But before he could speak, something strange happened. The long-range scanner began to beep, loud and fast. The officer at the station looked confused. He was young, probably on his first mission. "Sir, I'm getting a signal from outside the system, the young officer said. But that is impossible. The Voidborn block all communications. Show me, Veltar ordered. The main screen changed. Instead of the red dots of the enemy, it showed a view of space around their planet. Everything looked normal, empty black space, with distant stars. I do not see anything, HFY said. The signal is coming from grid 77 Alpha, the officer explained. But our eyes see nothing there. Dr. Morin moved to his own station. His long fingers danced over the controls. The signal is very weak. It uses old technology. Very old. I'm trying to clean it up. Suddenly, a voice came through the speakers. It was rough and deep. The translation computers had trouble with it. Unknown station, this is Captain Jake Morrison. We got your call for help. Sorry we are late. The command room went quiet. Everyone stared at the speakers. Veltar felt his heart beat faster. Who is this? He asked into the microphone. Identify yourself. Name is Jake Morrison. I fly for the United Earth Space Force. We picked up your distress signal about 6 months ago. Been traveling ever since. Veltar looked at his officers. None of them had ever heard of Earth or this United Earth Space Force. HFY checked. Her computer. Sir, there is no record of any world called Earth in our database, she whispered. Captain Morrison, Veltar said into the microphone. We have no record of your people. Where do you come from? There was a pause. Then what sounded like laughter. We come from Earth, Sol system, third planet from the sun. Look, we can talk. About maps later. Right now, you have about 600 shadow things heading your way. We would like to help. Shadow things? Dr. Morin asked. How do they know about the Voidborn? Captain Morrison, Veltar said. Our sensors show no ships in this area. How many vessels do you have? Ships. Just one. The Liberty. But do not worry about your sensors. We are running silent right now. These shadow boys seem to track energy, so we are keeping quiet. Suddenly, the main screen lit up with new information. A huge ship appeared on their sensors. It was twice as big as their largest warship. Its hull was black as space. The design was like nothing they had ever seen. How did they hide something that big? Whispered Captain Zexalon. The human voice came through the speakers again. This time it sounded harder. Coalition Command, you need to pull your people back 50 kilometers from the enemy line. We are about to start shooting. Captain Morrison, Veltar said. We have tried every weapon we have. The shadow creatures cannot be hurt by energy weapons. They cannot be hurt by solid weapons. Even our best science weapons do nothing. Well, there is your problem, the human captain said. You have been thinking too hard. Sometimes the old ways work best. What do you mean? Veltar asked, but the human did not answer. Instead, something began to happen in the sky above them. First came a sound, a deep roar that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It grew louder and louder until the building shook. Veltar had never heard anything like it. It was scary and powerful. What is that noise? HFY shouted. Their answer came as streaks of fire cut through the atmosphere. Not energy beams, real fire. It trailed behind small, dark objects that screamed down from the sky like falling stars. The objects slammed into the Voidborn lines. Each hit sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Where they struck, the shadow creatures simply stopped existing, not broken apart or scattered, completely destroyed. Those are solid projectiles, Veltar realized. But our solid weapons did not work. Sir, Dr. Morin called out, I am reading very dense materials in those projectiles. They seem to be made of metal heavier than anything we know. More fire streaks rained down from the mysterious ship. Each one found its target. The Voidborn, which had seemed unstoppable, began to retreat for the first time since the war began. Then Veltar saw something that made him forget how to breathe. Small ships were coming down through the smoke and fire. They looked like metal, birds of prey. Their design was sharp and angry. The first small ship landed near the command center. Its doors opened with a loud hiss. What came out made Veltar step backward. They were tall and walked on two legs like his people, but they moved like hunters, like predators. They wore armor that looked both old and new at the same time. Their faces were not covered. The one in front took off his helmet. He had short brown hair and blue eyes. He walked straight to Veltar and held out his hand. "Commander Veltar, I guess," the being said. "Captain Jake Morrison, United Earth Space Force. Sorry we are late. Had to stop for fuel." Veltar did not know what to do. Slowly he reached out and touched the offered hand. The human gripped it firmly. "How?" was all Veltar could say. The human smiled. The expression was both friendly and dangerous at the same time. "How did we beat them? Easy. Turns out shadow monsters do not like heavy metal moving really fast." Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Coalition Command Center like he owned the place. His blue eyes moved over the alien technology with interest, but no fear. Behind him, more humans entered the room. They all wore the same black armor and carried weapons that looked simple but deadly. Veltar stared at the human captain. Morrison was shorter than most Coalition species, but built like a fighter. His shoulders were broad and his hands looked strong. When he smiled, Veltar could see white teeth that seemed designed for tearing. "You said you got our distress signal 6 months ago," Veltar said. "But you are not in our databases. How is this possible?" Morrison looked around the command room. His eyes stopped on each alien species. The bug people with their compound eyes, the water people with their blue skin, the plant people with leaves growing from their heads. He did not seem surprised by any of them. "Database problems, huh?" Morrison said. "Yeah, that makes sense. Earth is not exactly on the local maps." A woman stepped forward from the human group. She had yellow hair tied back and wore the same black armor as the others, but she carried different tools. Science equipment instead of weapons. "I'm Lieutenant Amy Collins," she said. "Science officer. We can explain the database issue later. Right now we have bigger problems." She walked to the main screen and looked at the tactical display. Red dots still moved across the map, but there were fewer of them now. Much fewer. "The Voidborn are regrouping," Collins said. "They were not expecting resistance. That gives us maybe 2 hours before they try again." "Voidborn?" asked Dr. Moran. "You know what they are called?" "We have been fighting them for a long time," said a third human. This one was huge, even for their species. His name tag read Taylor. "Very long time." Veltar felt his legs go weak. "You have fought these creatures before?" "Every few years. They find our home system," Morrison explained. "We have learned how to deal with them. Question is, can we teach you?" Kexhai looked up from her station. "Sir, I am getting reports from all over the planet. The shadow creatures have stopped moving. They are just sitting there." "They are thinking," Collins said, "trying to figure out what hit them. The Voidborn are not stupid. They learn fast." Morrison walked to the tactical display. He studied the red dots for a moment. Then he pointed to a cluster of them near the southern continent. "They will attack there next," he said. "It is the furthest point from our ship. They think we cannot reach it in time." "Can you?" Veltar asked. Morrison grinned. "Watch and learn." He spoke into a small device on his wrist. "Liberty, this is Morrison. Fire mission. Grid reference 779 by 442. Full spread." "Copy that, Captain," came a voice from the device. "Guns hot. Firing in 10 seconds. Veltar looked at the screen. The southern continent was thousands of kilometers away. Even their fastest weapons took minutes to travel that distance. "Impact in 3, 2, 1, said the voice from Morrison's wrist. On the screen, the cluster of red dots suddenly disappeared. All of them. Gone in an instant. "How?" whispered Dr. Moran. "The distance, the time, it is impossible." "Rail guns," said Sergeant Taylor. "Magnetic acceleration. Projectiles travel at 1/10 light speed. Collins nodded. We mount them on the spine of our ships. Each projectile weighs 2 tons and moves at 30,000 kilometers per second. But the power requirements, Dr. Morin protested. You would need the output of a small star. We have good power plants, Morrison said simply. HFY checked her instruments. Sir, I am reading massive energy signatures from the human ship. Their reactor output is off the scale. How many people are on your ship? Veltar asked. 400, Morrison replied, plus about 2,000 tons of ammunition. The coalition officers looked at each other. A ship that size with only 400 crew meant most of the space was dedicated to weapons and power systems. These humans had built a pure warship. Captain Morrison, Veltar said slowly, why did you come here? We are strangers to you. This is not your fight. Morrison was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window at the ruined city below. Smoke still rose from the broken towers. In the distance, small fires burned where the Voidborn had passed. When I was young, Morrison said, my father told me something important. He said that if you can help someone who is in trouble, you should help them. Not because you get something back, just because it is right. Collins stepped forward. There is more to it than that. The Voidborn are not just your problem. They spread from galaxy to galaxy. Eventually, they would find Earth again. You said you have been fighting them for a long time, Veltar said. How long? About 6,000 years, Taylor said. Give or take a century. The silence in the command room was complete. 6,000 years was longer than most civilizations had existed. How do you survive against them for so long? Asked Captain Zexalon. We learned to be hard to kill, Morrison said. Also, we learned to kill them first. But our weapons do nothing to them, HFY protested. We have tried everything. Collins walked to the science station. May I? She asked Dr. Morin. He nodded and stepped aside. Her fingers moved over the controls with practiced ease. Soon, the screen showed a detailed image of a Voidborn creature. It looked like living shadow with red eyes that burned like dying stars. Your scientists are right about them coming from the space between galaxies, Collins said. But they missed the important part. The Voidborn do not exist completely in our reality. What do you mean? Dr. Morin asked. They phase in and out of normal space. When you shoot energy weapons at them, they shift to a different dimension. The beam passes right through empty space. Then how do your weapons work? Veltar asked. Mass, Morrison said simply. A 2-ton piece of metal moving at 30,000 kilometers per second has too much kinetic energy to avoid. It hits them in all dimensions at once. Plus, we use special ammunition, Taylor added. He pulled a small cylinder from his belt. It was about the size of his thumb and made of dull gray metal. Depleted uranium core wrapped in high explosive. When it hits something that exists in multiple dimensions, the explosion happens everywhere. Dr. Morin took the cylinder carefully. It was heavier than it looked. This is primitive technology, but it works against creatures that can defeat our most advanced weapons. Sometimes primitive is better, Morrison said. Complex things break. Simple things keep working. HFY looked up from her station again. Sir, long-range sensors are picking up movement. The Voidborn are forming up for another attack. How many? Morrison asked. At least 3,000. Maybe more. Morrison did not look worried. If anything, he seemed pleased. Good, he said. That should be most of them, in one place. He spoke into his wrist device again. Liberty? This is Morrison. Prep the heavy package. Full bombardment pattern. Copy that, Captain. Heavy package ready. Target coordinates? Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Voidborn were gathering in a valley between 2 mountain ranges. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Send coordinates directly from the Coalition tactical system, Morrison said, and tell the gun crews to use the big shells. Big shells? Veltar asked. 10-ton penetrators, Collins explained, for when we really want something dead. Captain, came the voice from Morrison's device, we have a problem. That many targets will require a full spread. We will be empty after this shot. Morrison nodded. Do it anyway. If this does not work, ammunition will not matter. He turned to Veltar. Commander, I need you to get every ship you have left into the air. When we hit the main force, smaller groups will scatter. Your people need to hunt down the ones that run. We only have 12 ships left, Veltar said, and they are all damaged. Then use what you have. Every Voidborn that escapes will bring more friends later. The tactical display showed the coalition, ships lifting off. They moved slowly like wounded birds. But they moved. Impact in 30 seconds, announced the voice from Morrison's device. Veltar watched the screen. 3,000 red dots clustered in the valley. If this failed, his people would die. All of them. 10 seconds, the voice said. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The valley disappeared. Not destroyed, not damaged. It simply ceased to exist. Where? There had been mountains and rocks and 3,000 void-born creatures. There was now a crater 5 kilometers wide and half a kilometer deep. Target eliminated, reported the voice from Morrison's device. All primary hostiles destroyed. The command room erupted in cheers. Officers from a dozen different worlds hugged each other. Some cried, others laughed. A few just stared at the screen in shock, but Morrison was not celebrating. He was studying the sensor readings with a serious expression. Collins, he said, quietly. Are you seeing this? The science officer looked at her instruments. Her face went pale. What is it? Veltar asked. Long-range sensors, Collins said. There are more ships coming, a lot more. How many? Morrison asked. Collins checked her readings twice before answering. 50,000, she said. Maybe more. They will be here in 18 hours. The cheering stopped. 50,000 ships. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Veltar looked at the long-range sensors and felt his hope die. The approaching fleet was so large, it showed up as a dark cloud moving between the stars. 18 hours, Morrison said quietly. He did not sound scared. He sounded like he was thinking. Captain, Veltar said, with respect, one human ship cannot fight 50,000 void-born vessels, even with your powerful weapons. Morrison looked at him with those strange blue eyes. You are right. One ship cannot win that fight. He walked to the communication station and spoke into his wrist device. Liberty, patch me through to Fleet Command, Priority Alpha. Fleet Command? Kexhai asked. You said you only had one ship. I said the Liberty was the only ship here, Morrison corrected. I never said it was the only human ship. The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing space around their planet, it now showed what looked like empty black void. But, as Veltar watched, shapes began to appear. Ships, dozens of them, then hundreds. Admiral Kate Brooks, commanding officer of the Second Fleet, came a new voice through the speakers. This one belonged to a woman. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of authority. Admiral, Morrison said, we have a situation here. 50,000 hostiles inbound. Request immediate support. Already on our way, Jake. ETA 6 hours. Try not to get yourself killed before we arrive. Morrison grinned. No promises, ma'am. The screen now showed over 300 human ships. They were all different sizes and shapes, but they shared the same dark hull design as the Liberty. Built for war. How many ships do you have? Dr. Morin asked in wonder. The Second Fleet has 400 ships, Morrison replied. The First and Third Fleets are fighting Voidborn in other galaxies. This is what we could spare. Collins was working at her science station. Admiral Brooks, we have detailed sensor data on the approaching hostiles. Transmitting now. Received, came the Admiral's voice. Analysis shows standard void-borne formation, heavy cruisers in the center, light scouts on the flanks. We have dealt with worse. Veltar stared at the humans around him. They spoke about fighting 50,000 enemy ships like it was just another day at work. You have fought fleets this large before? He asked. Bigger, said Sergeant Taylor. The Battle of Wolf 359 had over 100,000 void-borne ships. That was a tough one. Wolf 359, HFY whispered. That is in our database. It was listed as a dead system. No survivors. It is dead now, Morrison agreed. We had to crack the star to stop them. Took out their entire invasion fleet in one shot. The coalition officers looked at each other in shock. These humans had destroyed a star to win a battle. Captain Morrison, Veltar said carefully, how many people live on Earth? About 12 billion, Morrison replied. Why? 12 billion people. And you can field 3 fleets of 400 warships each? Collins looked up from her station. Earth builds about 200 new warships every year. We have been building them for 6,000 years. We also build them to last, Taylor added. Some ships in the first fleet are over 1,000 years old, still fighting. Dr. Morin was running calculations on his computer. If Earth has been building warships for 6,000 years at 200 per year, that would be over 1 million ships. Not all of them are still active, Morrison said. We lose ships in battle. Some get too old and get retired. But yeah, the Earth Defense Force has about 800,000 ships spread across known space. The command room went quiet. 800,000 warships. The entire coalition had maybe 50,000 ships total, and most of those were transports and science vessels. Why do you need so many ships? Veltar asked. The Voidborn are not the only threat out there, Collins explained. There are things in the dark between galaxies that make the Voidborn look friendly. We learned early that the universe is not a safe place, Morrison added. If you want to survive, you have to be ready to fight. HFY checked her sensors again. Sir, the human fleet is moving very fast. At their current speed, they will arrive in 5 hours, not 6. We are in a hurry, came Admiral Brooks's voice. Long-range scouts report another Voidborn fleet moving toward the Andromeda Galaxy. We want to finish this fight and get there before they do. Morrison nodded. Understood, Admiral. We will hold the line until you arrive. He turned to Veltar. Commander, I need your people to evacuate everyone from the surface. Get them into the deepest shelters you have. Why? Veltar asked. Because when the shooting starts, this planet is going to shake, Taylor said grimly. Collins brought up a tactical display on the main screen. It showed the approaching Voidborn fleet in detail. The ships moved in perfect formation, like a dark tide rolling across space. 53,000 vessels confirmed, she reported, mostly heavy cruisers and battleships. They are not taking any chances this time. Good, Morrison said. When they bring everything, we can kill everything. He walked to the tactical station and began marking targets on the display. His movements were quick and sure, like he had done this many times before. Priority targets are the command ships, he explained to the coalition officers. Big ones in the center of the formation. Kill the commanders and the rest fall apart. How can you tell which ones are command ships? Asked Captain Zexalon. Experience, Morrison said simply. Also, they always put the biggest cowards in the safest spot. The next few hours passed quickly. Human technicians worked alongside coalition engineers to improve the planet's defenses. They installed new weapons systems and reinforced the underground shelters. Veltar watched them work and was amazed by their efficiency. The humans did not argue or debate. They saw what needed to be done and did it. When they encountered a problem, they found the simplest solution and moved on. Your people work well together, he observed to Morrison. We have to, Morrison replied. In space, if the crew does not work together, everyone dies. We learned that lesson the hard way. How did humans first encounter the Voidborn? Dr. Morin asked. Morrison's expression grew dark. They found Earth when we were still primitive. We had just invented farming. Most humans lived in small villages. What happened? They tried to eat our sun, Morrison said. Slowly, so the energy would last longer. It took us centuries to figure out what was happening. By then, winter was lasting years at a time. Crops failed. People starved. Collins looked up from her work. That was when humans first learned to fight as one people. Every tribe, every nation, working together against the threat. It took us 2,000 years to build our first starship, Morrison continued. Another 1,000 to find the void-born home base. We destroyed it, but by then they had spread to other galaxies. So you followed them, Veltar said. Someone had to, Taylor said. They do not stop. They do not negotiate. They just consume everything in their path. The communication system crackled to life. All units, this is Admiral Brooks. Fleet translation. Complete. Beginning approach to the target system. On the main screen, the human fleet appeared at the edge of the star system. 400 ships arranged in perfect formation. They moved with deadly purpose toward the approaching void-born fleet. Admiral, Morrison said into his communicator, be advised that coalition forces will provide support where possible. Copy. That, Jake. Try to stay out of our firing lanes. Veltar looked at his own ships on the tactical display. 12 damaged vessels against an invasion fleet. It would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain. Captain Morrison, he said, our ships are no match for void-born technology. We will only get in your way. Morrison shook his head. Every ship matters in a fight this big. Your people have heart. That counts for something. Contact. Collins announced suddenly. Void-born fleet is changing course. They have detected our fleet. On the screen, the dark cloud of enemy ships began to spread out. They were forming a battle line 50,000 kilometers wide. They are trying to surround us, observed Dr. Morin. Let them, Morrison said. Admiral Brooks loves it when they do that. Why? Veltar asked. Because then we know where they all are, Taylor said with a grin. Admiral Brooks's voice came through the communicators again. All ships, this is Brooks. Execute Plan 7. Repeat, Plan 7. The human fleet suddenly scattered. Ships broke formation and raced toward different parts of the void-born line. It looked like chaos, but Veltar could see there was a pattern to it. What is Plan 7? He asked. Something we learned from wolves, Morrison explained. When you hunt something bigger than you do not attack it head-on. You bite it from all sides until it bleeds to death. The first explosions began to light up space as the two fleets engaged. But these were not the clean energy beams favored by coalition technology. These were massive nuclear explosions that turned night into day. Nuclear weapons? Dr. Morin asked in shock. In space combat? Fusion. Warheads, Collins confirmed. Each one has the power of a small star. We load them into our railguns and shoot them at the enemy. That is barbaric, Kexhai whispered. Morrison looked at her with cold eyes. Barbaric works. Pretty weapons are for pretty wars. This is an ugly war. The battle raged for 2 hours. Human ships darted in and out of the void-born formation like sharks attacking a whale. Every pass left enemy ships burning, but the humans were taking losses too. 17 ships down, Collins reported, but we have destroyed over 8,000 hostiles. The void-born are adapting, Morrison opts. The silence after the battle was strange. Veltar had grown used to the constant sound of alarms and weapons. Fire. Now there was only the quiet hum of the command center computers and the soft breathing of his officers. Captain Morrison stood at the main tactical display, studying the empty space where 50,000 enemy ships had been just minutes before. His face showed no emotion, no joy at victory, no relief that the danger was over. Just cold calculation. Captain, Veltar said quietly, is it really over? Morrison shook his head. This was just one fleet. There will be more. Lieutenant Collins looked up from her science station. Her blonde hair had come loose from its tie during the battle, and she looked tired. Long-range sensors are picking up movement in the next star system. Another void-born force is gathering there. How many? Morrison asked. Hard to tell at this distance. Maybe 20,000 ships. They are staying far enough away that our weapons cannot reach them. Morrison nodded. They are learning. Next time they will not come straight at us. Sergeant Taylor was checking his equipment at a side table. His massive hands moved over his weapons with practiced care. Good thing the Admiral left us some backup. Veltar looked confused. Backup? I thought the Second Fleet moved on to fight elsewhere. They did, Morrison said. But they left us a present. He walked to the communication station and spoke into his wrist device. Liberty, deploy the packages. Copy that, Captain. Deploying now. On the main screen, small objects began to separate from the human ship. They were black and difficult to see against the darkness of space. Hundreds of them spread out across the star system. What are those? Asked Dr. Morin. Orbital defense platforms, Collins explained. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. They are automatic, Taylor added. Smart weapons that think for themselves. If anything hostile comes into this system, they will wake up and start shooting. Veltar watched the small objects take their positions. How long will they stay active? About 50 years, Morrison said. By then, either the void-born threat will be eliminated or someone will come to replace them. 50 years? HFY asked in amazement. Your technology can run without maintenance for 50 years? Human technology is built to last, Morrison replied. We do not have time to constantly repair our equipment. It has to work the first time. Every time. Collins stood up from her station and walked to the window. Outside, the first rays of morning sun were breaking over the horizon. The city below was still in ruins, but people were beginning to emerge from the underground shelters. Captain Morrison, she said, the people down there are going to want to thank you. They are going to want to build statues and name their children after you. Morrison joined her at the window. I hope they do not. We were just doing our job. Your job? Dr. Morin asked. Fighting monsters from space is your job? Someone has to do it, Taylor said simply. Might as well be us. Veltar studied the three humans. They had just saved an entire world. But they acted like it was nothing special, like saving people was just what you did when you had the power to do it. Captain Morrison, he said slowly, I need to understand something. Why do humans fight? Not just the void-born, but any threat that comes along. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. When I was 10 years old, my home city was attacked by raiders from the outer colonies. They came in the night and took whatever they wanted. Food, supplies, people. My little sister was 7. They took her too. He paused and looked out at the rising sun. My father and the other men went after them. They were farmers and shopkeepers, not soldiers. But they went anyway. They found the raiders on a moon 3 days away and killed every one of them. They brought my sister home. Did your father survive? Veltar asked gently. No. None of them did. But my sister lived. She grew up and became a teacher. Had 3 children of her own. All because some farmers decided that letting evil win was not an option. Collins nodded. Every human learns that story or one like it. We learn that sometimes you have to fight, even when you are scared, even when you might lose. Because if good people do nothing, evil people win. But you are so few, HFY protested. 12 billion people spread across the galaxy. How can you fight threats that span multiple galaxies? We do not fight alone, Morrison said. We find allies. People like you who are willing to stand up to bullies. Taylor finished checking. his weapon and slung it over his shoulder. Also, we fight smart. We do not try to match the enemy ship for ship. We find their weakness and hit it hard. What is the Voidborn weakness? Dr. Morin asked. They think like a hive mind, Collins explained. All their ships follow the same tactics. They do not adapt quickly to new situations. Plus, they are cowards, Morrison added. They only attack targets they think they can beat easily. When they meet real resistance, they often retreat. But they keep coming back, Veltar observed. True, but each time they come back, we are ready for them, and each time we kill more of them than they kill of us. Collins returned to her station and began working on her computer. I have been analyzing the data from today's battle. The Voidborn ships were different from the ones in our database. Different how? Morrison asked. Smaller crews, less intelligent behavior. I think these were not the main Voidborn force. Morrison frowned. Scouts? Maybe. Or maybe the real Voidborn are somewhere else, and these were just the bottom of the barrel. That is not a comforting thought, Veltar said. Truth rarely is, Taylor replied. But it is better to know what you are really facing than to fool yourself with pleasant lies. The communication system activated with an incoming call. Admiral Brooks' voice filled the room. Morrison, are you receiving this? Yes, Admiral. Go ahead. We have a problem. The Voidborn fleet we were chasing has split up, 3 separate groups heading for 3 different galaxies. We can only follow one of them. Morrison walked to the tactical display. What about the First and Third Fleets? First Fleet is engaged with a major force in the Magellanic Clouds. Third Fleet is hunting a Voidborn superweapon near the galactic core. They cannot be spared. Collins looked up from her computer. Admiral, what if we could give you more ships? Explain, Lieutenant. The Coalition has manufacturing capability. If we shared our ship designs and weapons technology, they could build human-style warships. Not as good as ours, but good enough to hunt scattered Voidborn groups. Morrison considered this. It would take years to retool their factories and train their crews. Not if we help them, Taylor said. Leave behind some of our people as instructors. Set up training programs. You would do that? Veltar asked. Stay here and teach us to fight? Someone has to, Morrison replied. The galaxy is too big for humans to protect alone. We need allies who can stand on their own. Admiral Brooks' voice crackled through the communicator. Jake, it is your call. I can spare maybe 50 ships and 1,000 volunteers. Morrison looked around the command room at the various alien species. The bug people with their logical minds, the water people with their natural teamwork, the plant people with their patience and endurance. Each species had strengths that could be useful in the fight against the darkness. Do it, he said. Establish a training base on this world. Start with basic tactics and work up to fleet operations. Copy that. Detaching the light cruiser squadron and support personnel. They will be under your command until further notice. Collins smiled. This could work. The Coalition species each have different strengths. Combined with human technology and tactics, they could become a real force. How long would it take? Veltar asked. 2 years to train the first wave of officers, Morrison estimated. 5 years to have a real fleet, 10 years to be able to fight independently. And you would stay here for 10 years? Kexhai asked in wonder. Some of us would, Morrison replied. Others would rotate back to Earth for new assignments. But, yes, there would always be humans here to help. Dr. Morin was running calculations on his computer. If every Coalition world contributed ships and crews, we could field a force of several thousand vessels within 5 years. Not just any vessels, Taylor corrected. Warships built specifically to kill Voidborn, fast, heavily armed, and tough as nails. Morrison walked back to the window and looked down at the people emerging from the shelters. They moved carefully, still afraid that the danger might return. But they moved with hope now, too. There is something else we need to discuss, he said. The Voidborn are not the only threat out there. If we are going to build a real alliance, you need to know what else lives in the dark. What do you mean? Veltar asked. Collins brought up a new display on the main screen. It showed a map of the known galaxy with various markers scattered across it. The Devourers in the galactic core, she began. Machines that eat planets and turn them into more machines. The ghost ships in the outer rim that steal the souls of entire crews. The time eaters near the black holes that make whole star systems never exist. And those are just the ones we know about, Morrison added. Every year we find new horrors lurking in the spaces between civilizations. How do you stand it? Veltar asked. Knowing that such things exist,